Football is absolutely back. Week 1 is almost in the book, so I'm bringing you some early waiver wire targets and some buy targets for week 2 fantasy football. And when we started off with the waiver wire, I don't know if I can start off with anybody other than Isaiah Likely for the Baltimore Ravens, which coming into this week, he was only about 28 to 35% rostered across platforms. And listen, I am a huge proponent of a guy named Mark Andrews, but Isaiah Likely looked like the tight end that you want to own, where Mark Andrews only had 2 catches for 14 yards. And so when we're looking at this overall week 1 comparison, of course, 111 yards from Isaiah Likely, 9 total receptions, 1 total touchdown, and 12 total targets compared to the 2 total targets for Mark Andrews. Now, is that because Mark Andrews was dealing with the remnants of his injury from last year / getting in a car accident 2 weeks ago? I do not know. But Isaiah Likely, it could be the change of the guard in the tight end landscape. So especially if you don't have an elite level tight end, you got to be going out and trying to get Isaiah Likely. Typically, we get in the early part of the season, we get a few guys that you got to target, some running backs, some wide receivers. We haven't had a tight end like this break out in fantasy football, but you're going to have to go get him onto your roster if you can. My second waiver wire target is going to be Alec Pierce. And I was talking to my boy Andrew over at the League FFB about yesterday, talking about, hey, what is your opinions on AD Mitchell in this offense? What are your overall opinions on Josh Downs? And I think the conversation probably should have gone, we probably needed to talk a little bit about Alec Pierce, but we really didn't. And Alec Pierce literally has like a 1% rostership across platforms, 3 receptions for 125 yards, 1 total touchdown on 3 targets. Now, only getting 3 targets for 125 yards and 1 total touchdown, that's definitely not sustainable, it feels like, but Anthony Richardson absolutely loves to unleash the ball. So that is why Alec Pierce, to me, especially if you want to shout out a wide receiver, Alec Pierce is definitely a guy I would be considering, and it'll be awesome to see Anthony Richardson continue to develop, but he can uncork it for 50 plus yards. So excited for some Alec Pierce. My third player that you need to be targeting off the waiver wire is going to be Greg Dortch, who Greg Dortch kind of looked like the wide receiver 1 for the Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride didn't look great. And we look at the overall snap share. Marvin Harrison Jr. ran 55 snaps. Michael Wilson had 49. Greg Dortch had 37, 26 routes run, but had 8 total targets. So even though he was on the field a little bit less, getting a little bit less snap share, Greg Dortch was absolutely being targeted on the actual field. And of course, that ended up with him getting 11 fantasy points in week 1 in full PPR. So definitely Greg Dortch is a guy that I would be targeting at the end of the waiver wire. Like I said, week 1, we have a lot of players that we can definitely be targeting, but I'm definitely excited about those guys. Another guy is going to be Rashid Shaheed for the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr looked like prime John Elway out there today, absolutely slinging the ball, and really, by the Saints putting up 37 points on Carolina. I couldn't tell if that's because Carolina's defense is terrible or the new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, absolutely cooking, which I think he was absolutely cooking. And that first overall touchdown in the game, he is a lightning explosive wide receiver. We've talked about how it's really only Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara in this offense. So someone else does have to have a little bit of fantasy football success. So I definitely think Rashid Shaheed should be a guy you potentially is targeting. My next waiver wire ad is going to be Tank Bigsby for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we're looking at Tank Bigsby. The thing that excites me about Tank Bigsby is the fact that he is only rostered in 4% of leagues, but he ran for 73 yards on 12 total carries. ETN took 12 for 44 and a touchdown. So Bigsby was more productive in this offense, but we do know Doug Peterson wants to use a 2-back bell cow system. And so for me, Tank Bigsby definitely needs to be added and rostered in any sort of format. So if he's on your waiver wire, like I said, there's the ad of a Bucky Irving, there's an ad of a Tank Bigsby this week. Definitely be taking some shots on these handcuff level running backs. My next guy is going to be Brandin Cooks, and this is going to be a little bit of a deeper one in a waiver wire because I like Brandin Cooks. We've known what Brandin Cooks is year in and year out for the Dallas Cowboys. And this week, already at the end of Sunday night, wide receiver 17 with 14.5 points in PPR. Dude has been anywhere between wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 35 on a points per game basis over the last few seasons. He's absolutely just the most consistent wide receiver. The way we talk about Tyler Lockett is exactly how we need to be talking about Brandin Cooks. And he's the clear 2 in this offense where it's CeeDee Lamb. We just saw Jake Ferguson go down with an injury that looked pretty serious. So we're going to have to see Brandin Cooks is going to emerge in that number 2 role with not a great pass catching running back in the backfield. Absolutely love some Brandin Cooks off the waiver wire. And my last and final guy is going to be Bucky Irving, who I was telling you guys to stash on Saturday. So hopefully you did. If not, definitely go try to pick him up off the waiver wire. He had 62 yards on 14 total carries. carries. He averaged 6.9 yards per attempt, which is absolutely great. This is the snap share between him and Rachaad White. So absolutely excited to see how things continue to progress for Bucky Irving. I'm not saying that he's going to take, Rachaad White had a really great day in fantasy football too, but I definitely think those guys are worthy of considerations on the waiver wire heading into week 2. Now, talking through some buys, I think we'll definitely be putting out a little bit of a buy sell video later this week, but early on production of buys, guys that I'm targeting is going to be, first guy's going to be Drake London. If we look at Drake London did not have a great fantasy football day by any stretch of the imagination, where he was the overall player 70 with 3.5 fantasy points per game. And if you guys have been tuning in to the channel at all, you're probably going to be like, well, Caleb, this reminds me a lot of what was happening last year. And so I'm a little bit nervous about Drake London this year. And I would agree, there should be a lot of concern against this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. We saw Drake London have 56 snaps, 28 routes run, and 4 total targets, putting up 3 fantasy points. That's not great, especially when you drafted Drake London in the middle of the second. And we talked about how Drake London was a risky pick in that early second round, especially considering the fact that we hadn't seen him do anything. But we did think Kirk Cousins, this overall offense would get going. We saw Bijan Robinson have a really good day, but we didn't see Drake London, and Kyle Pitts honestly wouldn't have had a good day if he didn't catch a touchdown. I think Drake London's going to be the perfect buy opportunity. Whoever drafted Drake London is probably freaking out a little bit because we haven't seen anything before and we didn't see anything this week. So definitely a buy for me would be to go target Drake London, see what those offers are going to look like. Like I said, at this current moment, we can't see what the current landscape is because trades haven't happened, but hopefully by Tuesday we get a better idea of what those trades would end up looking like. We move on to my second player that you need to be buying, and it's going to be Mark Andrews. And we talked very similarly about Isaiah Likely, how you have to be adding him, how we're a little bit worried that it's the passing of the guard here for the Baltimore Ravens with Isaiah Likely. But when we take a look at this overall snapshot, the thing that you're going to see from me, Mark Andrews actually had more snaps than Isaiah Likely. So I think as much as we are worried about Mark Andrews and this overall target share and how things are going to look for him in this offense, he did have 59 snaps. He had 3 more routes run than Isaiah Likely, but Isaiah Likely got all the targets. Now, there was talk on fantasy football Twitter, there was talk in the NFL about how the Kansas City Chiefs were bracketing Mark Andrews, so it left a lot of the field open to Isaiah Likely. We did also see that this offensive line for the Baltimore Ravens wasn't really able to hold up against the Chiefs front four, and that was really causing a lot of quick throws, a lot of things to Isaiah Likely. Now, that is not for me to dictate and say that you should not be going and adding Isaiah Likely off the waiver wire. Hear me out. I just think if we look at last year's tight end performance, Hunter Henry was the tight end one in 2023. And so this year, when we're looking at, a down performance from a Travis Kelce, a down performance from a Mark Andrews, and we're talking about top 5 tight ends, even a guy like Trey McBride, I'm breathing it in. I'm realizing that sometimes the worst thing you can do is overreact in week 1, but the best thing that you can do is react and address and look at other people in your league that might be a little bit scared with their Mark Andrews shares and going out and buying some Mark Andrews in week 2. My next buy is going to be Josh Jacobs, who in this Green Bay Packers offense on Friday night, Josh Jacobs, when we're looking at him out of the backfield, had 49 snaps and had 3 total targets and had 16 carries. So you're going to say to me, he got 19 total touches, but didn't put up the best fantasy football day that we've ever seen, putting up overall player 64 in PPR with 12.4 fantasy points. Now, 19 total touches. There's a little bit of concern with Jordan Love and this injury. We know it's not going to be season ending, but he's definitely going to be out for a few weeks. So I think they're going to rely heavily on Josh Jacobs in this running game. So for whoever, the volume was there, he still seemed to have bursts. Like I said, once these running backs get past the age of 26, I need to see it in a season before I'm like, yeah, I want to continue to buy, or how I'm going to be monitoring my shares of that. And I absolutely loved what I saw out of Josh Jacobs. Now, it wasn't Saquon Barkley-esque. We all know and saw that because Saquon Barkley absolutely demolished. But I definitely think that you have to be going and trying to see what a Josh Jacobs trade would be. Like I said, these are all guys that your league mates are probably going to be freaking out a little bit about. And I'm not saying you're buying low. I'm not saying you're going to be trading a Bucky Irving to go get Josh Jacobs. Hear me out. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you're going to be able to buy low compared to maybe early 3rd where Josh Jacobs was being taken. Now you can get him at a late 3rd, early 4th round price. That's kind of what I'm saying there with Josh Jacobs. My 4th buy is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., who had maybe the worst rookie performance of the day. Malik Neighbors didn't have a great performance, but Marvin Harrison Jr., with all the hype, with all the excitement, we were expecting a lot bigger things out of Marvin Harrison Jr. It seemed like when we look at the overall target share, we see that Marvin Harrison Jr. ran the most snaps, 55, 36 routes run, but only had 3 total targets. We were expecting a Marvin Harrison Jr. performance 6 to 7 targets. It's kind of was my idea, my projection. That 100% didn't happen. So like I said, if you started Marvin Harrison as a top 12 wide receiver, which I did, I started Marvin Harrison Jr. over Jalen Waddle, and I 100% regret it. And Jalen Waddle freaking got out with a concussion for half the game. So Marvin Harrison Jr. was definitely a letdown, but I also have to think we have to understand he's a rookie. This offense is going to continue to develop. They're going to figure out how to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball. He was drafted as a top 5 pick for him. He's an absolute elite level prospect. We saw him wide open. There's the Twitter of him wide open down the field and Kyler Murray just misses him. So I think a lot of it is to do with them not playing in the preseason, never really playing in an NFL game together, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is an elite level talent. So I'm definitely buying in. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake London, both those guys are probably pretty vital right now for their fantasy football managers. So definitely going to see what it's going to take to go buy some Marvin Harrison Jr. My next buy that I think you should be going out and getting is going to be Ja'Marr Chase. And the contract negotiations, he said he was going to be limited today, but Ja'Marr Chase played way more than just the red zone and on third down, which is what it was being reported. Ja'Marr Chase ended up playing 43 snaps, 31 routes run, and had 6 total targets. Now, like I said, this isn't like he was absolutely Megatron out there, but 12.2 fantasy points in full PPR. There's a lot more that we'd like to see from Ja'Marr Chase, and I think we're going to see it, especially with not knowing how hurt T. Higgins is. This Bengals offense the last few years has gotten off the very, very, very slow starts, and so I think this offense is going to absolutely have to start get humming. So hopefully this contract situation gets figured out, but if I am an owner, I am going and looking and saying, hey, I need to go get Ja'Marr Chase on my roster because we do know what that ultimate level upside is looking like, and if someone saw what Ja'Marr Chase did last year without Joe Burrow, and then it starts off slow again this year, like I said, fantasy managers are so hot and cold. This performance of a cold is when I am pouncing at getting a guy like Ja'Marr Chase. So if you like fantasy football, if you want to win your week 2 lineup, my goal in week 2 is to help you get from 0-1 to 1-1, or helping you go from 1-0 to 2-0. I'm going to be answering all your start state questions, providing all the best research and analysis that I can. So hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.